Welcome to the Jim Acosta Show, and it's another day that ends in Y in the Armageddon that is happening inside the Trump White House. Here to join us to talk about this, Rick Wilson of Lincoln Square. Rick, always great to see you. I
Hey,
mean, I don't know if Armageddon is the right term, and maybe it's the apocalypse. Maybe, when Trump talked about the apocalypse for Chicago, maybe he was talking about his own White House, but his own chief of staff, Rick, Susie Wiles, who you know well from Florida
oh
politics.
yes.
I've come to the expert here. She has given this no holds barred, or maybe she didn't think it was on the record interview with Vanity Fair and Chris Whipple, who has
Right.
done a lot of, he's written some books about the
Sure.
job of the White House chief of staff. You know Chris Whipple.
Yeah, I know Chris well. Yeah, he's a pro.
And Susie has said all kinds of stuff in this interview, talking about Trump as having an alcoholic's personality, which I thought was an interesting choice of words. But we're all diving into this. Your thoughts?
Look, I have rarely seen anything as remarkable as this interview.
Yeah.
11 hours or so of tape with her. And, so that which sort of made the denials and the walkbacks from the White House today very embarrassing for them. When she says, I never said that. And Whipple's like, well, here's the tape.
Yeah.
Look, this was when I was, still in college, but the last big thing that blew up like this for a chief of staff was David Stockman during the Reagan administration, 1984, gives all these off the record interviews about the budget, and it destroyed him. He got fired and threw him out of the White House, basically. But Susie has gone full in on describing Trump's character here, describing what's happening at this White House, describing how people are enabling and empowering him. And she goes into things like the Epstein files and the Venezuela attacks and then Trump and Putin. And Jim, it just strikes me that this is a remarkable window into a very secretive, closed off White House that does not want to ever give anybody on the outside a window into the truth about what's happening. And woo, she threw it open and said, everybody come on in for the party.
No question about it. And it makes me wonder what Susie is up to. Is she trying to get fired because she knows what's coming? I don't know. Or did she just think I've had chats with her. It's been a long time since I've chatted with her.
Sure.
But she can be pretty unvarnished and like kind of running through things. But she said that, she tried to get Trump to stop his score settling after 90 days.
Right. She said we had a loose agreement to end it after 90 days. And last time I checked, we're on somewhere around day 300. So.
That's right. This is he ran on revenge and retribution, and that's what he's doing as president of the United States.
Yeah.
She describes J.D. Vance, the vice president, as a conspiracy theorist. Which makes me wonder: is J.D. Vance really a conspiracy theorist, or does he just play one on TV because he thinks that's what it takes to win in 2020?
As I like to say, J.D. Vance, if that's what his real name is. You never know with this guy. He has become a great role player in Trump's world. He's become a guy who has conformed himself to what he thinks Trump wants.
Yeah.
The other one, and I was sharing this with a whole bunch of Florida people and former Marco people this morning, where she says Marco Rubio has so much principle he would never change just for politics, and all of us were like,
never.
Come on, man.
That's how he got elected to the Senate. He said, I'm this Tea Party guy, even though he was Jeb Bush's right-hand man and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. All of us who know. And it was kind of astounding to watch. When you look at Susie's quotes in the story, the only parallel I can get to is she had given a handful of interviews after Ron DeSantis was reelected.
Right.
Or elected, elected, not reelected, elected the first time, where she had been the campaign manager. And they were not anywhere near what you saw in this Vanity Fair piece. And that's what led to the rift with her and DeSantis and Casey DeSantis.
Right.
That got her thrown out of DeSantis world, that sent her to Trump world. So Jim, look, I'm a big believer that people, should be direct about what they want in a job. If you want out, you should get out. This isn't a prison sentence. It's a job. Yeah. You can walk out the door anytime. Now, one of the reasons I think that we're seeing a lot of this is Susie knows it's going to be hard for her to go back into the white shoe lobbying world after this mess. It's going to be really tough for her to go back to Brian Ballard and and go and represent corporate clients in the future, because this is not an administration that is endearing itself to normies.
Exactly.
It's harder and harder to convince people that Susie has a value add in a lobbying capacity, unless she does something to sort of put some daylight there. And I don't know. I think she's kind of stuck, honestly. I think she's in a bad spot.
Yeah, and I guess she can't write a book now because she gave away all the information that she could have written about to Chris Whipple.
Yeah, but she could have. I mean, God, think about this, Jim.
Maybe this is just a teaser. I don't know.
The number of people in this administration who are in a position to go out and get multi-million-dollar book advances is not zero. It's not a lot.
Zero. Well, and she describes Elon Musk, and this is according to the interview that she did with Chris Whipple.
Oh, yeah.
And we should note, she went out and she disputed some of these quotes, and then Chris Whipple provided audio to the New York Times. I read that too. But she said that Elon Musk is an avowed ketamine user and an odd duck. She says that Russell Vought, the budget director, is a right-wing absolute zealot, and that Pam Bondi, the attorney general, completely whiffed in handling the Epstein files. You think?
Really? Really? Thank you, Susie, for that revelation.
Don't hold back, Susie.
Right. Tell us how you really feel, Susie.
But I mean, harsh but true. And also it makes me think Susie is, harboring this normal Republican inside of her that,
some of it, yes, some of it did feel like she was trying to say, I'm not one of the kooks.
Yes.
And I do think there were some insights in there where it wasn't, I mean, the Musk thing, the Vought thing, those things struck me as opening some space. And even a few of the things with Trump, Trump doesn't depend on anybody. When she says at the very end of the article, is Trump dependent on you? She's like, Trump isn't dependent on anybody. I mean, a chief of staff who's looking to get out into the world after this and be the person who's like, I'm the interpreter of all things Trump world. You'd think that would be something she would have been a little more, we have a strong relationship and I'm honored he values my judgment is what, a normie would have said. But who knows, man? I find this whole thing, it's one of the most remarkable pieces of journalism to come out of this administration in the second term to date.
No question.
And Susie's going to have, I think she's going to have a rough day today. Then maybe this is the end for her.
Yeah. And it's right around the holidays and, firings and resignations. Here's what she says on X. The article published early this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff and cabinet in history. Significant content was disregarded. Much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it, this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. The truth is the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months, blah, 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 blah.
Because no one would think this White House was chaotic or negative.
A well-oiled machine.
Yes. All cylinders banging away every single minute of the day.
Yeah. But I mean, I totally agree with you that this is an excellent piece of journalism by Chris Whipple, who is a serious guy. Yeah. This is not a bomb thrower. This is not Michael Wolff.
No, no. Chris is a very, by the book guy.
Yeah. And he writes about chiefs of staff. It's sort of like his
he wrote a terrific book about chiefs of staff. And as was pointed out in the Vanity Fair piece today, Wiles is at a year right now.
Yeah.
The average tenure is about a year and a half. The only guy I know, and I knew Andy well when he was chief of staff, Andy Card lasted 5 years and a little bit with Trump or with George W. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know. And look, for all that some in our audience might not love George W., George W. treated his staff well and was not insane. Right. I don't know how Susie Wiles lasts another 6 months in this circumstance versus, versus a relatively normal procedural kind of White House, like every other president before Trump has run.
Yeah. And you mentioned the whole DeSantis thing. I mean, she's had falling outs with other notable people like the DeSantises.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and so maybe this is part of a pattern for her. I don't know. But
I mean, I'm more tempted than I should be to psychoanalyze her right now.
Yeah.
When she says, and she's written about her relationship with her father, Pat Summerall, who was both a famous sports guy and B, a famously alcoholic famous sports guy.
Yeah.
That line of her saying Trump has an alcoholic's personality,
Wow.
man, that hit. I was like, oh my God, there's a daddy thing going on here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to parse it or interpret it, but
it says he has an abusive personality. I mean, that's the undercurrent there, is that, you don't say it's like an alcoholic in a good way,
right. Yeah, right. Like nobody says, oh, that alcoholic's such a great guy to have around.
Right. Yeah. And so, it says to me that she's had to do a fair amount of coping and dealing with him.
Yeah.
And this is how she copes with it. She thinks of him as like her father was.
And yeah, I mean, like I said, I am trying not to psychoanalyze this too much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But I read that line, and knowing her story, knowing that she's told many times about her dad, it just struck me really hard. And I think the other part of this is the story. To my mind, Susie is the star of this story. She's the center of this orbit in the story. But the way you see this cast of characters portrayed, of Levitt and Marco and JD and the rest of this crew, I found it fascinating how it didn't feel just like the sort of like White House towel snapping locker room stuff to me. It felt a little, there's a certain nasty undercurrent to the whole thing.
Yeah. Some score settling of her own, maybe.
And there may have been a little bit of her wanting to, say you're all a bunch of rookies, you're all a bunch of amateurs, and I know what I'm doing, and I know how to take steps in preserving my reputation and my position in this mess, and I'm not going to be caught up in the shenanigan of dying in the fields of Trump for no upside.
Yeah. Well, and just one final thing. I mean, I want to move on to talk about Rob Reiner, but I mean, I was told a long time ago, never let the staff be the story.
Ever.
And she's not Leo from The West Wing. She's not supposed to have a major speaking role. And this to me is probably where she falls, has to fall on her sword for Trump, because you can't be the bigger story than him.
No.
And I can't imagine that he's gonna look at this on his golden toilet and think that this is a good day for her or for him. So we'll see. I mean, to me, that it's one of the old adages I've always been told in politics: never let
it is. And having been there, having been in this kind of space, you're not the principal. The principal is the principal.
That's right.
And
even if the principal's a fucking nut job,
right? Even if the principal is crazy, you don't get up in the morning and say, well, my policy is I'm going to do that. It's always in that. And here's the weird thing: Trump's White House is profoundly transgressive, and always has been.
Yeah.
But there is also something about the White House in American political culture where there's supposed to be a sense of dignity and control and rationality, but it's all supposed to reflect back. We speak for the president. We carry out his wishes and will. We're the ones who are honored to be here, Chief. Boss, we're just happy to be on the team. Yeah. And I just don't think he has the same loyalty that an ordinary White House would have engendered at a real level. There's the fear level. There's the, oh my God, what happens to me if I cross him? But it's not the same. It's not the same kind of thing. I mean, I know people that worked for Reagan. I worked for both HW inside the government and out, and for W outside, during the 2000 race. And people were loyal to them in a way that, privately recognized their faults, tried to, give good advice, but there was never a cult-like thing. If George W. Bush had woken up one morning and said, silence piggy, or shut quiet piggy to a woman, people would have quit. People would have said, sir, I can't be around this. I can't be a part of this. But with Trump, they want to stick around. They don't want to leave. They don't want to quit. They're afraid that if they leave the orbit, he'll destroy them. They're probably not wrong, Jim.
No, that's right.
They're probably not wrong.
Once you leave the cult, the cult comes and finds you.
Yeah.
It's one of those cults. But and that kind of dovetails nicely to the next subject, which is the way Trump went after Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
And we all talked about how completely disgraceful this was. We can show the post again, I guess, if it doesn't trigger our gag reflex. It's totally horrific. It's totally insane.
Yeah.
We've all had I think it's evil. We've all had our say as to what it is, and feel free to do that too. But getting back to the cult thing, one of the things that I thought was interesting yesterday was it felt as though there was a little bit of quiet deprogramming, self-deprogramming going. There were people in MAGA who were saying, wait a minute.
Yeah. This isn't it, boss.
This isn't it. I can't do this anymore, or I can't do this right now, or what the hell's going on? Yeah. Did you sense that too?
I did. And even some of his most stalwart defenders were like, they can't bring themselves to condemn him fully, but it's like, I wouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
Or we shouldn't be saying that. A few, to their credit, came right out. Eric Erickson, who's been a fan of this president off and on, came out and said, no, this is wrong. The lunatics are going to be the lunatics, but there were a lot of people, and you saw the Congress in full overdrive in the denial mode.
Yeah.
I didn't see the tweet. I didn't hear he said that. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't read. I don't have eyes. I'm blind. I'd have no one on my staff to tell me what's happening. I've never met Donald Trump. They went through the whole rigmarole of that. But there were a lot of people.
That scene from Johnny Dangerously. I can see, I can hear, but who am I?
Who am I?
Anyway, sorry.
Good job. Good callback.
That's a good one.
But I mean, Jim, it just struck me as the same people who got 600 people in this country fired because they refused or did not display the official emotions of grief for Charlie Kirk yesterday are out giggling, a lot of them, at Donald Trump mocking the death of somebody who frankly, and I mean, I considered Rob a friend. We got to know each other through politics.
Me too. Great guy.
And was a great guy. And I wrote about this a little bit yesterday. And every time I sat with him or talked with him on the phone, he was not a guy who was about himself. He really believed that what was happening in this country was a mission that he had to address. And believe me, I read the Trump tweet and I felt sick to my stomach for a second, but then I realized the way to respond to this is to keep fighting the guy.
Yes.
The way to respond to this is to not let this sort of stuff stand. And as I tweeted yesterday, I'm like, when the Grim Reaper does take Donald Trump, I promise you my better angels will be on vacation. This is, he has defined.
It'll be a global celebration. I mean, I'm just going to say.
He's defined the presidency down so far.
Yeah.
And humiliated this country in so many ways that in some ways what we read yesterday should not have shocked us, or Monday should not have shocked us, whatever day it is now. I lose track.
Yeah.
It should not have shocked us. It was shocking, but it should not shock us. We're a decade into this cruelty and brutality to people. And he is a sick, perverse, sadistic man.
Yeah.
So, and I think he wanted this response in some ways.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because he knows the Epstein files are coming. He'd rather have some other crisis to worry about.
He feeds on it. I think he feeds on the hate. It's sort of like the Emperor and Star Wars,
Yeah, right. Let it flow through you.
Let it flow through you. Yeah.
It is sad and it is sick. But he is a sick man. And I don't think we should pretend he's not a sick man.
And I heard similar from folks yesterday talking to people, and it made people think, okay, this lays out the stakes. He's profoundly evil, and that means none of us can sit on the sidelines. And you mentioned the Epstein files. I will say we did build a countdown clock. We don't have all the bells and whistles. We have some.
Right.
We have a bell. We have a whistle, but we put together a countdown calendar, 4 days.
Yep.
So the Epstein files, Department of Justice deadline. There it is, right there. We're working on getting the clock to also move, to be animated. These are lean times. We're doing.
We have to work in this new media environment, folks. We don't have all the hot tools that come with a a $2 million control room.
That's right. But you got 4 days, Donald. That's the long and the short of it. But
TikTok, motherfucker, as they say. No, and look, I think what we're going to see on Friday is Pam Bondi is going to say, humana, 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 humana. I've got to protect the victims. I can't release this information.
I think that's what we're going to see too. And maybe in Susie's mind, that won't be whiffing. Maybe it seems like whiffing to me because
it's whiffing. And it'll be one of these things where mysteriously everything that gets released will mention a Democrat.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what they're up to.
I want to ask you a question. I mean, Dan Bongino is apparently like scarpered. He's apparently out. His office is empty. He's no longer around. I'm wondering if you think he was trying to get out before this bomb goes off, or what? Because he clearly, in a way, he triggered this Epstein crisis.
That's
he
right.
Said, I've seen things that are so horrifying. I can't imagine anyone would ever be able to be sane if they, whatever it was. And then Pam Bondi came out a few days later and said, nothing to see here. So I'm fascinated, like, where is he now? What is he going to do? Did he just make like a huge podcaster play to say, I'm the guy who's going to leave because I can't be a part of this? I don't know, but I'm fascinated by it.
I'm fascinated by it too. And honestly, I mean, it just says to me that you and I, Rick, could be top officials at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I think that, it's just a matter of time now before we're hired under a different administration. No, I mean, I think that this Epstein files release is a major moment for Donald Trump. It's there hasn't been anything really that's penetrated the base the way this has. I mean, I think the Rob Reiner thing to some extent shook people and made them think, okay, maybe he is a scumbag. But the Epstein files thing is to another level.
Yeah, her mentioning that, like, there's a targeted group of people who are very activated by the Epstein files.
That's right.
Well, yes, they're called Americans, Susie.
That's right.
And
there's a lot you can swallow when you're in Washington and you work in the swamp. But I mean, the Epstein files to me it just cuts across every Democrat. It cuts across every way of life, walk of life.
It really does, Jim. And for as much as it kind of started with something that was this conspiracy on the far right, that they were going to discover that it was all Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and George Soros or whatever. I think, and I'm not one to frequently give a lot of praise to our MAGA fellow Americans, but a lot of them have been very angry and very upset about this, and they're right to be.
Yeah, they're
right to be. There is a cover-up. There is a lie at the heart of this administration about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and they want to know it. They want to know what it is, and they want to know not just because of some prurient interest. They want to know now because I think they're starting to doubt that Trump was ever straight with them.
That's right.
It's leaking. The boat's leaking, but it's not sinking yet about that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I two words, the Epstein estate. They apparently have the mother lode of information.
Oh, yes.
And the emails that came out, and then the photographs that came out after that, the ones that just came out at the end of last week that showed Donald Trump on the plane with these, women with their faces redacted and so on. And you have members of the committee who have seen some of these photos who have said that sex acts are depicted in some of these. I mean, that some of the material is so horrible that it can't be, it may not be, something you can release to the public.
Look, and here's one of the things I think you're going to hear the administration say is, oh, well, they want to see all this horrible child assault material. Nobody wants to see that.
Nobody wants to see that.
Nobody in America wants to see any of that.
No.
But what they do want is some truthfulness out of this administration about why did they have dozens and dozens and dozens of FBI agents who spent $1 million+ of overtime trying to find Trump's name and redact his name out of these files.
Yeah.
I think people deserve that answer.
I agree with you. And I think they have totally been engaged in a cover up, and it is as plain as the nose on your face.
Sure.
And I think that they all are aware of this, and I think they're all just waiting for the implosion.
And it will come, folks. I mean,
it will.
This will not go the way that Donald Trump wants it to go in the end, because it's so ugly.
That's right. And just before you go, Rick, let's bring in Glenn Kessler. He's a next guest up. But Glenn made it his stock and trade over at the Washington Post to catalog all of Trump's lies for the first 4 years of that term. Got up to around 30,000 or so of those.
Better you than me, brother.
I'm telling you. But he looks okay. He's lived to tell the tale.
I did have frozen shoulder. I had needed PT for like 5 months to get it finished when I tried finishing that thing.
But Glenn, you've been doing the Lord's work for some time, and you've accumulated and assembled the top lies of 2025 for Donald Trump. And I'm surprised they all fit in one Substack, but you had to boil it down.
I had to limit it to 10, and you can see if you read it, I cheated a little because I had like 4 runner-up. I mean, it's I published on Monday because it's coming to the holidays. But this tweet or post he did on Rob Reiner that certainly might have qualified as well.
That's right. Yeah, he said it was because of TDS or whatever.
Right.
That Reiner, which is absolutely
horrifying.
Disgraceful. Yeah.
Well, and particularly, it was already well reported that they had arrested. That the prime suspect was one of the children, and yet Trump
that's right.
went ahead and posted.
That's right.
That is one of those things about Trump. The shamelessness that's built into him, even when he knows something is a lie, he will bull through it no matter what. It's always shocked people, but after a decade of this, my ability to be shocked is sort of gone.
Well, his secret power is that he has no shame.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people have some modicum of shame that it makes them think twice about something, but Trump has no shame.
100% right.
It's just not something that he's. I don't think he's ever experienced.
Yeah, I don't think he's constitutionally. I mean that in the personal sense, not the legal sense. Constitutionally capable of shame.
Yeah, and it's a superpower. I mean, it's what he does. Rick, great to see you as always. Thank you so much. And Glenn, let's dive right into
See you next
this.
time.
Good to see you. See you next time, Rick. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Great to talk with the wonderful Rick Wilson. And Glenn, I'm so glad you've been able to do this. And I can't imagine what it was like before we get to the top 10, what it was like being at the Washington Post. I was at my old place during that same time. And, we would run through a lot of his falsehoods and half-truths and flat out lies. And I remember back in those days, I don't know what the Washington Post went through, what you went through. There was a real squeamishness initially to even call things that Trump said a lie. And now it's pretty much the cat's out of the bag. We've heard some of these falsehoods spoken the same way over and over again so many times that now we know they're just lies. They're not. He made a mistake here or he fudged this over there. A lot of this they're just flat out lies. But can you talk a little bit about how this has been for you as a kind of stock and trade, as I said earlier?
Well, I was doing the fact checker long before Donald Trump showed up.
That's true.
And and we awarded Pinocchios. So that was the standard, and the worst rating you could get was 4 Pinocchios. And Obama would occasionally get 4 Pinocchios, or, Mitt Romney would occasionally get 4 Pinocchios. But in general, most politicians were in the kind of 2 Pinocchio range.
Yeah.
And then Trump came through and he was over and over getting 4 Pinocchios. And we couldn't, it's not like there was a prohibition against lie. I mean, I think Marty Barron, the editor at the time, thought it was a bit of a conversation stopper.
Yes.
And actually, I was quoted in a profile in the New York Times as saying Marty Barron doesn't want us to use the word lie. And the next day, Marty came up to me and said, "That's not true. If you can demonstrate it, you can call it a lie, but just have to be able to prove it." And then within a few weeks, Michael Cohen released these tapes of Trump discussing paying off his alleged paramours.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump had said he knew nothing about it. And Marty came up to me to my desk and says, "I think you now have your lie." So it was a front page story when the Washington Post fact checker said Donald Trump lied, because we had him on tape. There couldn't be any debate about it.
There's no debate about it. But I think it goes to and I do want to get to the list, but it goes to show people, I think, and particularly on the far right or inside MAGA, not that they want to hear any sort of rational explanation to any of this, because they just think we're all in the tank against Trump no matter what. But just hearing what you just said there, Glenn, reminds me of what I think a lot of journalists went through during that first term, which was a lot of sort of anguish over the language and how you reported on Donald Trump, how you talked about Donald Trump, because we all revered the institution of the presidency. Rick Wilson and I were just talking about this a few moments ago. And you don't want to say, oh, the president is a liar. The president lied. And one of the things I think Donald Trump sort of took advantage of and was able to take advantage of is all of that reverence that people attach to the presidency, all of those kid gloves that people took in their reporting on the presidency, sort of approached the presidency with in doing their reporting. Do you think that, do you agree with that assessment that maybe he did kind of take advantage of that, treatment to some extent?
It may be hard for people to remember, but back in the first term, there was this constant expectation that Donald Trump would eventually grow into an actual president.
Right.
And this is the moment when he was going to act presidential. And there was also a lot of feeling like, people didn't realize that Trump could do all sorts of things just because it hadn't been done before, because previous presidents, understood custom, they understood restraints. Trump blew through a lot of that, and in his second term, he's blowing through everything. So
correct.
There was just the feeling, he followed Obama, who followed George W. Bush, who, Ronald Reagan. Those are all people that revered the presidency and treated it as a sacred trust, as opposed to Trump, who never had any appreciation for that. So I don't know if he consciously took advantage of it, but certainly he got the benefit of the doubt for a long time.
Yes.
Because he was the president.
Yeah. And I think we all got to a point where, okay, he's just lying. Like the 2020 election. I mean, I think it was just, I talked to people on the inside who told me that he knew that he lost and that he was just trying to hang on. He didn't want to accept that he lost. And those were lies. To me, if you know you lost and you continue to say it was rigged and it was stolen, then you're lying. These are just lies. But on that note, let's get to Glenn, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the column you now write for Substack is it called On Trump's Bullshit, or was that just the headline of one of your pieces?
I did a series.
You did a series, okay?
I did it.
Which I thought that's great.
It's at 15 now. It was an attempt to basically say, because Trump is in essence a bullshitter, and
yes.
Bullshitting. There's this famous book called On Bullshit by Harry Frankfurt, who argued that bullshitting is worse than lying, because a liar knows what to do. A bullshitter just doesn't care about the truth. So, not having the constraint of the Washington Post, I decided to write a series. Maybe I'll turn it into a book about Trump's bullshit. And the idea was to get it down for the record, to look at these major things that he has been lying about and show why this is what he's saying is bullshit. And just before people, people forget. They memory hole a lot of this stuff.
They do.
So this in my Substack, it's called By Glenn Kessler. I guess I should have put that on my name, but it's anyway. If you can go to By Glenn Kessler.
Well, I saw that title and I just thought this is so perfect, but what you've written to wrap up the year is also great. Let's go through it. The top 10 lies of 2025 for Donald Trump. As we said earlier, hard to boil it all down. And Glenn had some honorable mentions, but I see tariffs, tax foreign countries, not citizens, and 50 million for condoms for Hamas. We're kind of starting from the bottom and heading to which I consider to be the granddaddy of them all. But let's go through these one at a time.
Right. So Trump has often said that, tariffs don't cost Americans anything, that it's, I'm going to make foreign countries pay. fact-checked ad nauseum, but he put this in his inaugural speech.
Right.
And I just felt like, even though it's an old lie, it deserves to be in the top 10 because it's had real consequences for American citizens, for companies. You can see the impact of the tariffs rippling through the economy. Trump had to give a $12 million bailout to the farmers, who he once again screwed over with tariffs. And you can see in his Vanity Fair interview that the chief of staff, Susie Wiles, basically said, "Yeah, it was tougher than we expected." And that's
right.
My question I had was whether or not, is it a lie if someone firmly believes something? I mean, Trump, despite every economist will say, no, a tariff is simply a tax on the consumer, like 95% of it. He has somehow convinced himself not, and it's willful. Suspension of belief.
Right. Bullshit. Or you go bullshit.
Yes. Right.
And 50 million for condoms for Hamas. I remember this one, and it's still kind of floating around.
Right. And this was one of the key pieces of evidence they used to destroy the U.S. Agency for International Development, which did a lot of good work around the world. I mean, like any government institution, there are flaws with it, but it saved millions of people, particularly in Africa and Asia. And there are lots of accounts of these people now dying because they're not getting this aid. And Elon Musk came up with this number, and then Trump repeated it. Sometimes he said 100 million. The idea was somehow that U.S. aid was such a worthless institution that they were giving Hamas $50 million a year for condoms. I checked it out. I mean, in all of the Middle East, U.S. aid gave less than it gave, or maybe it was like 50,000 for all of the Middle East, nothing to Hamas. And what they did, shows the sheer incompetence of the White House, is someone made a mistake, and there was HHS money, not U.S. aid money, $50 million for family planning as part of a HIV/AIDS program in the Gaza province of Mozambique, country in Africa. And they flipped that and made it Gaza, this Palestinian enclave.
Two different things.
By Hamas, yes.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Well, and they never really take them back either when they tell these lies and that they get corrected. So that makes it a lie too. This is another one. It's a sinister one. Ukraine started the war. I mean, that is pretty obvious.
Right. And what Trump was doing there, I mean, because he said, you should have made a deal. You should have started the war. And he's talking to Zelensky. This is, Russian propaganda. Russia says that Ukraine started a war. And I write that this is akin to saying, Japan was forced into attacking Pearl Harbor because of what America had done. And America did have some embargoes, but that was in response to Japanese atrocities at the time. So it just completely flips what happened, which was a unprovoked invasion of sovereign state.
Yeah. And we've ended weaponized government is another lie. I mean, obviously Trump has weaponized government. He's gone after Comey. He's gone after Letitia James. I mean, that's the definition of it. Yeah.
Right. And this just I try to point out in what context he says this. This was in the annual speech to Congress.
Right.
And, he made that statement as they're going after. And, and I note for the record, there's no evidence at all that Joe Biden ever told prosecutors, either at the local level or the federal level, investigate Donald Trump.
Right.
Yeah,
no. And the other thing too is, I mean, they weaponize governments against universities, law firms. I mean, it's, you name it. They've done it to almost every sector of American life. Economic problems are a Democrat hoax. I mean, that's obviously false, but they keep saying it.
Yeah. He was saying it's the affordability. The affordability
is a scam.
Is a Democrat hoax. And
and
I go through and describe the actual economic. Prices are higher. There's poor job growth, and and this is happening on, Trump's watch. I mean, he often tries to say, "Oh, I inherited the worst, inflation in history, and it's incredible," and I always like to point out to people that the cover of The Economist in October,
right,
was literally, the American economy is the envy of the world.
We were coming out of COVID better than just about any country on earth.
Right. And
we were the envy of the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And Tyler, I mean, this one, I know you don't have it at the top as the biggest lie of the year. This one kind of falls under the umbrella of what might be the most dangerous of the lies, the healthcare lies, the public health lies. Tylenol causes autism, which sort of kind of fits under the umbrella of all of these other cockamamie things that he and RFK Jr. have said in a way that's really impacted public health, endangered public health in this country.
Exactly right. And, and it fits in with his long time misunderstanding of the figures of autism. I mean, he tries to suggest that it's become a crisis, when actually the numbers have gone up because, first of all, the definition of what is, the autism spectrum has increased, and there's better detection. It's like,
that's right. We're more aware of it. Yes.
Yeah, more aware of it. And so, and then on top of that, he layered this absurd notion that Tylenol is causing this problem. And in my On Bullshit series, I devote a section to his handling of the COVID crisis, taking off from the Tylenol autism thing, because it's just, people forgot how he mishandled COVID.
And to the tune of maybe hundreds of thousands of people dying. I mean, according to Debbie Birx and Dr. Fauci and others who have said that this caused unnecessary deaths. This is one of my favorite ones. And I think for a while I ended 7 wars, because I used to make this joke on my show that maybe he saw 7 brides for 7 brothers too many times. And he's just got this number 7 in his head when he wants to exaggerate. But it's come up to now 8 wars. And I don't know, maybe he'll add some more before the end of the year, but I've ended 8 wars is another good one.
Yes. And I go through, I mean, it's a list of things. In some cases, his involvement was tangential. In other cases, it was not a war. I mean, he includes on the list a dispute over a hydroelectric dam between Egypt and Ethiopia, which has not led to any bloodshed. I mean, the reason he added 8 was because he included ending the Hamas-Israel conflict. And you can make a reasonable case that by putting pressure on Israel, he finally got, Israel to agree to a ceasefire in that conflict. But the other, the Post had a story last week. 2 of the so-called wars he solved have started up again.
Right.
And one, he claims he solved the India-Pakistan war, it was a ceasefire. India is so furious that he makes this claim because India believes fervently outsiders should have nothing to do with the dispute of Kashmir with Pakistan, that he's just really damaged relations with India because they're so upset that he's going around saying this. And of course, Pakistan, playing to his vanity, immediately nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize because they knew it would irritate India.
Because it helps them. Yeah, no question. And then we get to Venezuela, which I guess if we don't have a war with Venezuela, he can add that to the wars he ended. But anyway, each drug boat destroyed saves 25,000 lives. He rattles off these numbers. It's sort of like, we're going to save you 1,000% on your prescription drugs, and sort of, he likes to also speak in thousands. Thousands are a big part of his lies.
You're right. What I like about this is he says he, on average, saves 25,000 lives, which makes it seem like it was a carefully calculated figure.
Right. Which is not the case.
And as I note, there've been like 11 of these vessels that have been sunk as of the time I wrote it. So we're talking, maybe there's even more than 11. No, 19. Anyway, I remember I added up. It was about 500,000 lives, and supposedly, and the number of drug overdose deaths in the United States, for the last 12 months that we have figures, are 75,000.
Right.
and on top of that, he claims
So he's brought people to life. He's created life. Yeah.
Well, and the other part of this lie is he says that it's because the boats are carrying fentanyl, which we know they're not carrying fentanyl.
They're not carrying fentanyl. It was usually cocaine, we think, right? That's
cocaine, and it's headed to Europe. It's not headed to the United States. The cocaine that comes to the United States comes through Mexico, not through Venezuela.
Yeah, and they're small boats. Let's go to the next couple of lies, and these are the big ones. These I think we're down to the final two. There's the drum roll right there. And the symbols there, yeah, absolutely, no question about it. Epstein files were fabricated by the Democrats. That's a big one, I think, because it's so obvious and ridiculous that even his own supporters know that that's a lie.
Right, and in the case of the quote that I look at, he name checks James Comey, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, and none of them, the investigations took place during the Trump administration and the George W. Bush administration, and Comey had nothing to do with any of it.
Nothing.
He was not even in government then, and so it's just it's Trump trying to change the subject and deflect, and he's
failing at it, honestly, because I think his own base, they've rebelled over this, and I think this. I've talked about this on my show a number of times, which is I think this is the most dangerous thing to his presidency at this point is the Epstein files, because it's not whatever lies he can pull off and pull the wool over people's eyes. Things that are related to the Epstein files do not seem to be computing, with the base, with people in his base. Yeah.
Right. Well, Trump it's one of the rare instances where he's not been able to spin his way out of a problem. And, I always wondered what would have happened if Trump had been reelected, and, he would have been saddled with the inflation that Biden had, because, most economists say that inflation, that big spike was because of COVID and supply chain problems, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what have you. And so how would he have spun that kind of inflation? I always wondered that. And now we kind of know. I mean, this is another thing he's having trouble spinning his way out of, because people are upset.
That's right.
So, Epstein, it gets at one thing, and the rise in prices, the affordability issue is another.
I think that's problem. Right. The two of those together. But this one is my favorite because, as you point out in your story, it typifies sort of how this year has gone. With Donald Trump, he destroyed part of the White House, and he wants to build a golden ballroom, basically for himself. He wants to name it after himself, but he told the lie at the very beginning of all this that it won't interfere with the current building. And of course, if we look at the video, we know for a fact that that is not the case. They tore down the entire east wing of the White House.
Right, exactly, and he said it wouldn't interfere with the current building, and then he, once people got upset, he dismissed it as East Wing was, a terrible building and had, lousy bricks and small windows and what have you, and this is you may have told your viewers about this, but there's a famous story about Trump when he was just coming out as a developer, and he was starting to build the Trump Tower, where the site was an old department store called Bonwit Teller, and on Bonwit Teller's department store they had these really historic Art Deco friezes, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art felt they were very worth a lot, like $500,000, and asked Trump to donate them to the museum, and he said yes. And then one day he woke up and told the crews just destroy the friezes. And it's for many New Yorkers, that's how they learned about Donald Trump, because the front page headline of the Times the next day, he wasn't famous yet, so it just says developer breaks promise and destroys priceless friezes. But it was by the time people woke up, it was too late for anyone to do anything about it. It was already destroyed. It was like exactly what he did to USAID, what he did to the East Wing. And you'll love this. In that New York Times article, there's a PR person quoted, John Barron.
Oh boy, no way.
Yes, John, you should look it up. John Barron is quoted defending it and saying they were worthless. That Mr. Trump had done very careful studies and they were barely worth.
Oh my goodness! And that made its way into the New York Times.
Head of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We're an art museum. We would not ask for these if we had, deemed they were worthless. And then there was such a huge outcry that eventually Trump, a few days later, came out and started talking about it in person, no longer hiding behind his fake PR person.
Yeah.
And and made up all sorts of things like the cost of taking him down would have been much more than the value. He'd gotten an estimate that it was worth taking him down was twice as much as. And I was worried about hurting pedestrians. That ignored the fact that when they were tearing them down, you were literally told the workers, take these things and toss them, down 3 stories so that they're completely destroyed.
Wow. And for folks who are maybe a little younger and don't remember the stories about John Barron, that is when Donald Trump would call reporters and pretend to be a PR person for Donald Trump. He would call himself John Barron, which only somebody who is a practiced, accomplished liar has these kinds of stories that go back decades, or you could at least say years, but probably decades. And this is why I tell people all the time that New Yorkers are the least surprised people in the world when it comes to Donald Trump, because they've seen these antics for a long time now.
Well, and they were the least surprised, but believe me, they were surprised when he actually got elected. Because
that's right.
Because their experience, they never saw The Apprentice, which kind of created this myth of Trump as a successful businessman.
Yeah.
They just knew him as a tabloid sensation who built one interesting building and had another project that was mostly done with his father's money. And after that was just,
putting his name on things, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, we put together a graphic, Glenn, with the Pinocchios. There they are right there. That's a political cartoon, of a guy looking at something that says the truth and all the Pinocchios saying fake news, fake, rigged. Very worthy of Donald Trump and what he tries to pull off on a regular basis. But Glenn, as I said earlier, doing the Lord's work, please keep on doing it. And no Pinocchios for you. You get 0 Pinocchios today, Glenn.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Make sure you check out Glenn on Substack. It's just at Glenn Kessler, correct? And
by Glenn Kessler. Well, or you can find it at Glenn Kessler. Yes.
Oh, okay. Or
it's by Glenn Kessler.
The title of the Substack is by Glenn Kessler, and we're so glad that it's just like in many cases the Washington Post folks who left the newspaper, that you're doing, just you, like all the other reporters, doing great work and all these different new endeavors. So thank you, Glenn, very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Let's do it again soon. Thanks so much. Glenn, probably knows Donald Trump's lies better than he does. So it's important to have people like Glenn and the fact checkers around. And I will tell you, just to go back to what he and I were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, and it's an important one when it comes to Donald Trump. And it's sort of where he's gotten a bit of a pass over the years. And the viewers, readers, people who follow me over the years, I've seen this comment made towards me and some of my colleagues in my profession and so on. You guys go too easy on him. You should call the things that he says lies. You don't take his bullshit. Believe me, I've heard them all. And one of the things that you need to understand is, and this goes back to the topic of Glenn and fact checkers like him, is that you're talking about people who are really serious journalists, people who've worked on this craft and worked in this profession for years and years, maybe decades, at different newspapers. Maybe they started at a wire service and they worked their way up to a newspaper, and then they went to a different market newspaper. They finally got to the Washington Post, and my goodness, they just want to be professional at all times. And then Donald Trump comes in like a wrecking ball in Washington, D.C. in 2017 and doesn't have any regard for the truth, doesn't have any regard for the presidency, understood that he could go around breaking eggs. And that's exactly what he did. And, and took liberties with the truth that had never been seen before out of the Oval Office. And so this was a process. I mean, just having fact checkers at various news outlets was a controversial thing because, and having the fact checker fact check the president of the United States was something that was highly charged in terms of what the press can and cannot do in the minds of people inside the Republican Party, in the minds of people inside the MAGA movement. They were wondering, what the hell are you doing fact checking the president of the United States? And I remember at my old place when I was covering the White House, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd look at my phone, I'd see a tweet that was obviously false. He would make 10 more false statements before the middle of the afternoon. And a big part of our job during that first administration was just fact checking him, was just saying, well, this is true, this is not true, this is complete hogwash, these are whoppers, and so on. And you can just begin to imagine the cumulative effect of that over the course of days and weeks and months and years for journalists who have to do that kind of work. And so when I say I take my hat off to people like Glenn Kessler, I don't make that comment lightly. I don't say that to puff anybody up. It is because it is so damn difficult to do it, with the added pressure of, you can just rest assured that any editor of any newspaper, any executive at any news organization, especially the networks, they were going to hear from the White House. They were going to hear from people outside the government who were advisors to the president, who were saying, what the hell are you doing fact checking Donald Trump? Why are you doing this? And now that we are in Trump 2.0, where the lies are even more toxic, where the lies are even more destructive, where the lies result in the demolition of part of the White House, I think people finally understand where the stakes are. When the lies are about, my God, the murder of people like Rob Reiner, of somebody like Rob Reiner, when the lies reach that level, my God, we have to call them lies. We have to call it out. We have to do our job. And so it is immensely important that we have professionals who are on the case, on the job, holding Donald Trump accountable, holding this administration accountable. I mean, remember what Susie Wiles said to Vanity Fair, although she disputes a lot of this now. She described Donald Trump as being like an alcoholic. This is the White House Chief of Staff talking about the President of the United States. Folks, that is not a compliment. That is not something you say to say, well, here, I got some positive things to say about my boss. He's an alcoholic, or he acts like an alcoholic. Donald Trump, who does not drink, according to the Chief of Staff of the White House, behaves like an alcoholic, has an alcoholic personality. And, I don't even want to go down the road of, what alcoholism means. It's a very serious subject. I totally understand that. But we're talking about an individual in Donald Trump who is completely out of control these days. He's totally, as I like to say, he's not just out of touch, he's probably out of his mind. The cruelty with which he displayed at the beginning of this week in going after Rob Reiner, who was murdered allegedly by his own son, who was struggling with drug addiction. Why the president of the United States would insert himself in that fashion and say that Rob Reiner died from something to do with TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. It is sick, it is twisted, it is depraved, and it is evil. And it is a lie. Donald Trump's lies are getting more destructive. They're getting more toxic. This is not bullshit, folks. This is way more than bullshit. This is serious stuff. Because what these lies reveal is that the president of the United States is a danger, not just to himself, not just to the people who work inside the White House. He's a danger to all of us. When you have a president of the United States who plays that fast and loose with the facts, who is that out of touch with reality, who is that mean-spirited and nasty as to talk about somebody who was murdered in that fashion, it says to me that we are dealing with much more than an accomplished liar. We're talking about somebody who is a danger. He's dangerous. Lies have become dangerous. The people who are covering for these lies, excusing these lies, apologizing for these lies, they're dangerous too. They're a part of this problem. And what the beginning of this week and the lies he told about Rob Reiner, what it emphasized to me is the stakes. What the stakes are now. What the stakes mean to you and me. They mean that you and I can no longer sit on the sidelines. They mean that you and I cannot become detached and say, that's it, I don't want to pay attention to this anymore. It's just too damn important now. It's too important now. The lies are now at risk of overwhelming the truth, of destroying the truth, of ending the concept of common truths. And we cannot allow that to happen, folks. We cannot allow that to happen. My thanks to Rick Wilson. My thanks to Glenn Kessler. And thanks to all of you for watching. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. I'll see you next time.